All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's webcast. My name is Rebecca and I'm a content editor here at GitLab. Today we're going to be talking about continuous integration and how working continuously is not just for your development team, but it's good for all areas of a business. I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping items quickly before we get started. Firstly, this webcast is being recorded and we'll share the recording via email to everyone who registered. And we'll save your questions for the end of the webcast, but please feel free to type them in the Q&A as you think of them. You'll find it at the bottom of your webcast console. Continuous integration and delivery are the cornerstones of modern software development, but the continuous approach works in all areas of a business. It also needs everyone's contributions and helps us all to work more efficiently. In this webcast, we'll talk about what continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment mean, and how the continuous approach can help your business. We'll also talk about how to introduce continuous processes to your workflow by adopting DevOps, monitoring and collecting data, and decentralizing your team structure. Today, your presenter is Joshua, a product manager here at GitLab, and we've also got our CI lead, Camille, on standby to answer your CI questions. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Rebecca. We have a bit of a mixed audience today, so we're going to try and stay high level and focus on the business value your organization can achieve by adopting a more continuous mentality. So let's get down to it and discuss what CI/CD is before we get into how it can help you. Continuous integration, the CI and CI/CD, focuses primarily on the code, commit, and test fit stages of a typical SDLC pipeline you see here. The first key change with continuous integration is to have developers who are checking their code into a central repository on a regular and frequent basis. You really don't want to have a developer that have a local branch in your computer which is 2 weeks, 2 months out of date with the central repository. The same thing goes, of course, with your web developers and all the other folks who are working with the system like this. That is a road to merge conflict land, which is never a fun place to be, especially when you are nearing a certain release deadline. Every day or multiple times a day should really be the goal. Now that we have a central, frequently updated repository where our code under active development is living, we can take advantage of this for a significant gain. Leveraging a CI tool like GitLab, we can trigger automated processes to occur on every commit a developer makes. Most commonly, this includes running a build and then performing some automated tests. This has a few key advantages. First, you have a team-wide view of the health of every commit and whether it builds and passes tests. But by leveraging a CI tool, you can also take advantage of the fact that it has significantly more flexibility and power available. For example, we can run tests across multiple operating systems, multiple browsers, and in general, do more work than is practical on a developer's machine. This allows the team to find issues more quickly and earlier in the cycle, where it is cheap. If you have to wait until late in the release to find out a change failed on a particular environment, that can become very expensive and could ultimately jeopardize the release. It also allows the CI system to offload a lot of work from the developer, right? You don't have to worry about building their changes with a ton of different environments and different variables. The CI system can take care of all of that and leverage its ability to integrate with tools like Docker and Kubernetes to take full advantage of the power of the cloud without burdening a laptop. Best of all this work is automated, which frees up the developer to move on to other tasks while the build and test complete. Continuous delivery, or CD, is the next step. It is an evolution of continuous integration, which focuses on the next 2 phases of our SDLC pipeline, review and staging. All right, so we have our automated build and it has passed all of our tests. That's great, but why stop there? With continuous delivery, we add the capability to take that build and deploy it out to an environment like staging. This ensures that the staging environment is always reflective of the latest changes to the branch and is available as soon as possible for the broader team of stakeholders to review and participate. Integrated performance, UAT testing, and anything else that might have to occur here can now be done. Once that is complete, we can then click a single button, and that same build then goes on to be automatically deployed to production. This results in a few key benefits. First, We have a build that is always ready to be deployed. It has passed all of our tests and is running in staging. A simple button click is then all that is needed to elevate that out for production. And best of all, the process for doing this is reliable and repeatable. We've been using the same process for all the deploys so far, and it's even checked into the repository. No hands-on switches and levers required, reducing the possibility for mistakes. The second key benefit is that environments are updated or spun up quickly on demand. With review apps, the second a developer creates a branch, we can spin up an environment to run that code. This means that they can start collecting feedback from other stakeholders in the business immediately, like product, QA, documentation, marketing, and more. No more waiting potentially weeks for an integrated testing environment to arrive. This significantly reduces the barriers to collaboration and shifts the feedback as early as possible in the cycle where it is cheapest and easiest to address, right? No one likes the situation where, we're halfway through the cycle, product finally has to see a live working demo, and we find out that there's a better way to do things, and that can end up being very expensive. So again, we want to shift that as early as possible. And so that brings us to continuous deployment, which is an evolution of continuous delivery, and then it also relates to our production stage. The key difference here is that continuous deployment removes the manual checkpoint before pushing build to production. This model is most relevant when you have been operating with continuous delivery and have built the confidence and maturity in your operations to allow changes to begin to flow directly to customers, perhaps through deploys like Canary or other build strategies like blue-green deployments. The most important advantage here is that the feedback loop is as short as possible. If a prospect has reported a critical bug that is preventing them from signing, a developer can fix the issue with the changes live shortly thereafter. That is a beautiful and powerful thing to show a potential customer. It also reduces the amount of time and product improvements your developers have built sit in the shelf, waiting to be deployed. The cycle of development to testing to deployment is highly efficient, freeing up your team to focus on creating value and not on repetitive tests. I'd also like to share some interesting survey results that we just completed to help give you some insight into what your peers are doing in this area. We asked over 350 people, most of them CTO types, to what extent they use CI in their projects in their business. As you can imagine, with such a powerful set of tools, the adoption has really started to climb. Nearly 50% of respondents are using CI in at least 75% of their projects, and only 4% have never used it. Now, for those of you who may not be part of engineering or have as much experience with CI/CD, I'd like to give you an illustration of its capabilities in action and how it can transform how your team works. Remember, this is not just limited to teams of hundreds of engineers building the next big thing. It's also super helpful for small teams who could be working on something as simple as a static website. We'll be using GitLab running on the Google Container Engine, which is their container service. This provides a really simple way of getting started and lets us take advantage of tools like Docker and Kubernetes. We've also provided the instructions to do this exact demo yourself at home with your own Google account at the link shown. It has a few requirements, doesn't take very long, and you can even use a free trial from Google to give it a whirl. They provide $300 in credits over 60 days and won't bill at the end without permission. It's a great way to try out technologies like these easily and quickly. Finally, since we do have a mixed audience, we're focusing more on the power and the value of what continuous delivery can bring to your organization rather than some of the technical minutia. If you are a technical person and are interested in more, please reach out to us. We can happily discuss in more detail. So let's get to the demo and show you some GitLab CI in action. All right, so hopefully folks can see my browser here. I am logged into a pretty freshly created GitLab project, as you can see. I've only done two things just to speed things up a little bit. The first is I have imported a very simple minimal Ruby application. So I've got two files here in my repository. I have a very simple Ruby file, which does one thing, pretty much just show classic hello world. And I have also configured our Kubernetes integration since we are running on Kubernetes here. So that is also turned on. And that's it. So otherwise, we're essentially on a brand new project here. So let's go in and take a look at how we can set up CI. So we have two options here right in the home page. The option to set up CI and also an option to set up auto deploy. We're going to set up auto deploy so we can focus on some of the continuous delivery aspects of the product as opposed to CI, which is a little more well understood. So here you can see we've got a template we can choose for Kubernetes, which is how we're running. And it's got a couple basic options. First off, we can go in here and make sure we add in our domain. And I'm just using for demo purposes here IP to domain, a domain to IP tool. We'll go ahead and enter that in. And then down below you can see we have a couple stages in our pipeline. Build, test, review, staging, and production. Pretty common. And then down below you can see we have some scripts to go ahead and deploy that, but overall it's pretty simple. We'll go ahead and now commit our pipeline instructions to our repository. And we'll go back to our project. And you can see in this case, we now have a new pipeline automatically running. So that's great. Those commands are now taking action. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening here. So we've got 3 stages. We've got building, which is happening right now, staging, and then production. Let's go take a look at our first option, which is our first stage here, which is building. And you can see here we're going ahead and pulling down the Ruby image from Docker. We now headed and went and copied our particular Ruby file over to it and now repackaging the image with our changes and sent them up to our container registry. So that's great. So our build has just succeeded, and we now have a container image ready to go. So let's check out what's happening with staging. And staging is also just completed. And so you can see in this case, we've essentially deployed a container and now have it available at our domain here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Here's a link to our environment right here for staging. Go ahead and click on that. And then this button will actually launch us to our staging environment so you can see what's happening. And there we go. You can see I'm brought to a web page with a simple hello world. So our environment is running as soon as we have a simple, again, addition to our pipelines there. We'll go ahead and close that and go back. And let's go ahead and make some changes, right? So we'll go ahead and do what a developer does and start editing perhaps some of our code here. We'll go ahead and add a little additional flavor here. Add a little enthusiasm. In this case, we'll not commit to master. We'll make a branch, which is what your average developer will do in the course of their day. So we'll give it a quick branch name here. And we will go ahead and commit our changes. All right, and now you can see we've been prompted to also create a merge request. This essentially is an issue in our system. You can go ahead and collect feedback and have people review your changes. We'll go ahead and do this here. And we will simply break this and say when we're moving switch branch when we're accepted to clean things up when we're done. All right, so here we go. We have our merge request open, and you can see we have another pipeline running. So let's go ahead and check out our pipeline status. And you can see our build has actually already completed, so that's great to see. The same process happened again, right? It's reliable, it's repeatable. But in this case, we have a new stage here called review, right? In this case, I didn't commit back to master, which is our main branch for things like staging and production, but I now have what's called a feature branch going on. And in this case, I have a review environment running. And this means that I can now have an environment that's separate just for my changes here myself that I can now use to share with QA, product, documentation, marketing, anyone who needs to see this across the business. And this has happened as soon as I made my first change. So I can still go through and make more changes, continue to build this, but I have something available right now I can go ahead and show someone. And that's really powerful. So in this case, you can see here, my changes are reflected in our new environment. And again, folks can pass some feedback back to me, and I can adjust, again, really early in the process here. So that's great. So let's go ahead and go back to our merge request because I was able to get feedback from my team. I made my changes, and they have said that things look good, and we're now ready to push this out. Let's go ahead and accept the changes here. And this is going to take those changes I had in my separate branch and now commit them and merge them back to our master branch. And let's see what happens in this case. So now that my changes have been merged back, you can see I actually have another build running here. And this build is another one that has build, staging, and production because I've now updated my main branch that controls these environments. So our build will just take a couple seconds to finish up, and you can see it actually just finished, which is great. Our staging environment is in the process of being deployed and updated right now. This will take just a couple seconds. Go check out our environment here and see if it's been updated. And it's just about finishing. So right now we're having that just container just come up, or it takes a couple seconds sometimes. Oh, and there it goes. It should be ready. That's great. Go back to our staging environment and check it out. And there it goes. So our staging environment now has our latest and greatest changes, and we can now review, make sure that they are working as we expect, run some, perhaps again, some of our integration tests and things of that nature on our more production-like environment. And when we're happy with that, we can go back to our pipeline here. And you can see we now have our production option, which we can go ahead and now run. And so now we're taking that same package, the same process to deploy the staging, and we're now going to take that and update our production environment to be reflective of all the new changes. And you can see with all of this, we have, again, no hands on deck, no one manually pushing the buttons here. The deployment process, the build process is all repeatable, it's all reliable, it's all checked into a repository here. So you have version control there as well. It's really a great system for making sure that, again, you can have your changes quickly reflected in your environments, including review environments, and as well as a reliable, repeatable process. Again, just a couple seconds here as Google Container Engine brings up our updated pod, and then we'll be ready. Okay, so production is now done, and it's now deployed with our latest changes. We'll go ahead and check out our new production environments, and we have our latest and greatest changes now in production. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of the power of CI/CD and how it can bring value to not just your developers and giving them a easier and cleaner workflow, but also to the other parts of the organization. Again, marketing, documentation, QA, people who need to collaborate with your development team and have to take advantage of this process. All right, so we'll stop the screen share here and go back. And
Thanks, Josh. Yeah. So at GitLab, we try to walk this continuous talk by releasing early and often, with small iterations allowing us to improve continuously on each release. Now, as Josh mentioned, this isn't just the work of our product managers and developers. We need the cooperation and input of everyone from our front-end and UX teams all the way through to our community advocates and marketing. We've come a long way since delivery consisted of sending out packs of multiple CDs containing your latest release to retailers just once or twice a year. With new products and updates now released seamlessly online, customers are expecting quick and frequent deployment. So one of the advantages of CI/CD is that new code is automatically tested for errors and deployed instantly, so you can see it working from the moment your teams create it. CI and CD also automate some of the more tedious aspects of your developers' jobs, leaving them with more time to focus on building great features. This speeds up the time to market for a few reasons. There are fewer bottlenecks in the run-up to the release dates due to last-minute surprises, and with no big annual or biannual deadline, developers aren't pressured into releasing something before it's ready. You also don't have to wait another 6 months to a year to launch something just because it missed a deadline. This makes it possible to release new features more often, which has two benefits. Firstly, it helps to sustain your customers' interest in your product or service, and it also helps you to respond more quickly to feedback.
Your product and its features are easier to improve upon when they're released often and in small iterations. You get data and feedback from your users more frequently, and you can introduce fixes, tweaks, and adjustments with the next small iteration far more easily than if we're delivering a new version every few months or twice a year. It's also less risky to introduce a change if you know you can get their feedback and adjust accordingly in a short space of time. Customers are also more forgiving of a change they don't like or a feature that isn't polished if they know a new version will be released shortly. With CI/CD, you acknowledge your product might be complete, but it's never finished. as it can always be improved based on feedback. I know it's a bit of a refrain today, but it's so important to release early and often to market test your ideas and features as quickly as possible. Here at GitLab, we strive to make being continuous part of our lives. One example of this, which we just demonstrated earlier, is a review apps feature. We really wanted to add this because having a live environment for every feature a team is working on is just so transformative. We spent months debating the best way to go about doing this, and so we ultimately arrived at what we thought was the best method. Now, we had all these great ideas to magically make it work, automatically detect your environment, and more. But if we tried to do these things, it would be months before we shipped for people to use and get feedback, even ourselves. So we knew we had to cut scope until we could develop and ship the essence of this feature in a single release. Ultimately, we came up with a way to add two simple options to our CI platform, to set the name and the URL of an environment. We shipped just that small set of changes in 8.12, and it enabled users to start leveraging review apps. That's right, there wasn't a UI-based method to stop them in the first release. And then the next release, we went back and added the ability to manually stop them through the UI and add that feature back into the system. And then the release after that, we went through and added back some of that magic that we wanted to add originally. So we were able to now automatically stop and delete review environments whenever a branch was merged and deleted. So that kind of, again, brought some of that magic we wanted to originally. But it did take an extra couple releases to make sure we got that. But we were able to collect that feedback initially and earlier on the core design and concept of the feature. I hope this helps illustrate some of what we strive to do here at GitLab and how this model can help your organization as well, not just in engineering, but in other departments as well.
This process of continuous integration, delivery, and improvement also helps to keep you in tune with your customers and what they're asking for. People are more likely to offer feedback about a product if they believe it will actually have an influence. And it's also easier for you to integrate that feedback if you're releasing often. This is what we would call a bottom-up approach. The result is that your product is closely aligned with what your customers want, and they feel like they're being heard.
Listening to your customers and applying that feedback frequently boosts customer satisfaction and loyalty, helping you to keep their business and acquiring new customers. This means more revenue. Working in this way also helps to align your IT staff's contributions directly with revenue generation, which is good for team morale too. CI/CD automates time-consuming processes, saving your development time, so team time on backtracking to debug a problem, reducing the chance of human error, and ultimately saving you money. In this section, we'll go through some best practices for the 1/3 of you who are developers out there using CI less than 50% of the time. For those of you who have some additional experience with CI, maybe you'll find a few tips and tricks here as well. All right, so DevOps. Right? DevOps is a set of practices for developing software that emphasizes integration and collaboration between teams and sharing responsibility for the outcome. This means working together and keeping each other in the loop throughout the entire software development lifecycle. DevOps is a natural complement to CI/CD. By updating each other regularly, early and often, you can collect feedback and integrate suggestions throughout the process. Including your non-technical team members in the conversation means they can get to work on promoting your next release or gathering feedback from customers and supporting your software teams. As the build, ship, learn cycle speeds up, the team will naturally be working together throughout more of the cycle because they can stay and need to stay involved. And this benefits everyone.
If you're going to be improving continuously, you need continuous feedback to inform that improvement. Now, you can encourage explicit feedback by inviting your customers to give it, but you can also gather implicit feedback on your own by monitoring how customers are interacting with your product and exploring analytics.
Empowering your teams to be autonomous, make their own decisions, and to execute on those decisions independently reduces bottlenecks in the run-up to release. This doesn't mean teams work in a vacuum, that's not the DevOps way, but rather that they're free to develop solutions to internal problems and make their own choices without consulting some central authority to get the go-ahead.
Lastly, adopting DevOps doesn't have to be an overnight transformation. Find a way of implementing it that works for you and let it be an ongoing evolution. You can pick and choose elements that are suitable for your company, your team, and your product, and introduce them incrementally. You might even say continuously. So now you have a chance to ask any questions you might have about continuous methods and how to adopt them. But I'll kick things off first with a question for you, Josh. This ability of continuous delivery to automatically deploy our app to an environment. This sounds like a really cool feature, but how does GitLab CI actually know how to deploy my app?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we have a couple different ways you can solve that for our customers. The first is you can do whatever scripting you need to in that GitLab CI YAML file you saw earlier. So you have the complete flexibility and power to get as granular as you want to be. On the other side, we had what you saw today, which was our auto-deploy script. And this leverages some technology that detects what type of project you're running, Ruby or PHP and things like that, and then generally knows what the right way to do things are. And so that's a way to really easily take advantage of some of the automation and magic that we have to go ahead and know how to deploy those automatically. And then we have a middle ground as well. We have a number of example projects and example files that you can use as a basis for your own deployment scripts. And you can use those to get started with some best practices.
Okay, we've got some questions from the audience. I had a question from, sorry, I'm just trying to find it. We've just suddenly had a slew of questions come in. So Stephen wants to know if CI/CD is only available on the Enterprise Edition.
It's available on both. Yeah, and actually the server I was running, the demo on, is actually a GitLab CE server, so it's a community edition.
Okay, great. Carolyn wants to know, what do you do if your project doesn't currently use this or any CI tool? It sounds easy if the project is brand new, but what about legacy projects that have never used CI or CD?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to go ahead and get started. I'm not sure what tool you're using for your repository, but if you're using something like Git, you can hop on a tool like GitLab, which has CI. You can even set up repository mirroring if you don't want to change the current tool you're using, but you still want to get the code out into our system. And you can then go ahead and start working through the process. So start with CI, start to build, generate some of the scripts to build this package first, and then you can move on to having your test run. And then as you get maturity and comfort with that, you can then go ahead and move on to some of the deployments as well aspects. Absolutely, but it can still be pretty easy to go ahead and get started, even if you're, again, not using something that actually has a CI capability built into it.
Okay, Matthew or Mathieu, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, has a question. Do you have other support plan besides OpenShift? We use Kubernetes on Google Cloud and currently deploy using I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this, kubectl command in the CI script, which is not that integrated and adds a package requirement on the runner machine.
Yeah, so we, of course, are continuing to improve our integration here. I think you can probably see a couple of advances we had in our Kubernetes integration in the most recent releases, and we continue to have plans to go ahead and improve those. And so if you have feedback, definitely check out some of our issues that we have in our public issue tracker. And if you search for Kubernetes, you'll find a wealth of items there. So definitely is the answer there.
Okay, Pedro asks, what about when the application needs database changes?
Yeah, so this is probably imagining some of the deployment aspects. I'm not sure if Camille can add comments here, but generally I think you want to perhaps either build those into the script or potentially maybe have one more of a pause action. Camille, if you want to maybe take this one further. What do you do when an application needs database changes for continuous delivery?
Basically, currently auto-deploy doesn't support. Database changes. but it's quite easy just because it uses, for example, Heroku build packs to extend that with the database support. Usually you would just run database migration as a side container or before actually starting your application. It's just more like adding a step to your Kubernetes configuration, maybe. Other way would be maybe adding a step to your GitLab CI configuration to run database migrations of your application. These are basically two. There are actually three most common ways. The ones that I did mention are the two ones. And the third one is actually something that I think that came from the Heroku. It's really not automated, but in the past you would just run that migration command directly by logging to your server and issue db migrate command. It's now we are just going into automating all of that. So either GitLab CI.yaml or a container that is run before your application.
Awesome. Thanks, Camille.
Okay, Jamie wants to know, is there any expectation for the review or deploy apps to support more than just static sites in the future?
Yeah, so there's no real difference between any other environment that is used with CI with the review apps. So you can absolutely use that for any type of site that or any type of project that you want to use today. So it's definitely not just for static sites.
Great. Mark asks, what sort of overhead are you experiencing on maintaining all the different environments?
Yeah, so if you use a tool like Kubernetes or some other type of cloud scheduler, you can easily spin up and spin down new environments, as you saw just happen here. And the maintenance overhead really just comes from perhaps some of the extra running containers and some extra running pods. And so you could incur a little extra compute costs to run these, but our experience is that the benefits significantly outweigh some of the relative amount of cost to run some new environments. And then, of course, we can automatically spin them back down, as you heard, once they're no longer necessary.
Okay, a question from Shinya. What is the benefit of choosing GitLab CI/CD over our competitors' external CI tools?
Yeah, so probably the biggest benefits of GitLab CI/CD is that it's fully integrated, and so we have a single solution, a single product, and so you'll see some deeper integration that we have that other products perhaps don't have if we're trying to use GitHub, which does not have its own solution, you could then go integrate with a different one like Travis or something like that. So that would be kind of the biggest advantage. Then as far as I know, these also don't have some other features like review applications. So there's a number of benefits there for us over those two.
Okay, Sergio would like to know, if you're using Rancher, is there a way to do Docker exec from the GitLab CI pipeline?
Camille, that one might be best for you if you know. I'm not sure if you've also had experience with Rancher, but if necessary, maybe we can get back to you and see if we can help you there, if we can file an issue.
Yeah, we're getting a couple of quite complex questions, which I think may be quite difficult for us to get into just on the webcast. So if you have submitted a question and we don't answer it in the webcast, we will get back to you offline.
But just going back to the Rancher question, maybe I could jump in. Yes, this is definitely possible. The command that is executed as part of the GitLab runner process, it doesn't have TTI, but you can just do terminal emulation with different tools in order to get TTI if you really need it. But in most cases, you usually don't need TTI. Basically, Docker exec, if you specify additional parameters, it will give you TTI. But if you just run one single command, usually you just care about maybe input, but usually it's just output. So it's more a question about the workflow and what you want to achieve in this specific case. But the truth is that there is no limitation on using TTI.
Okay, we've got another question from Carolyn. She says she hired a dedicated tester who seems to think we need to use Jenkins instead. Is there a valid argument that you need to use both GitLab CI/CD and Jenkins together?
I think in general, sure, GitLab CI can take over a lot of what Jenkins can do. So I'm not sure exactly what the requirement is for Jenkins. It does have a number of plugins to a number of different things. So there could be one aspect there that is required, but definitely you can check out CI/CD, or if you have a particular requirement that you'd like us to look into, we're happy to do it as well, of course.
Okay, as I said, if you've submitted a question and we haven't got back to you on the webcast, please be patient and we'll get in touch with you offline. Does anyone have any other questions? Please do submit them now. Okay, I think that might be it for now. If you have any further questions, please feel free to start an issue and start a conversation with us there. We've just got another one in from Matthew. He says, we switched from Jenkins to GitLab CI. My experience with Jenkins is that it was always a custom hacked together set of plugins, each with their flaws. GitLab is way more standardized and integrated. Sorry, this isn't actually a question. This is just a compliment. Thank you, Matthew. That's very kind of you to say. Okay, I think that might be all for the questions for now. As I said, feel free to start an issue if there's something else you want to chat to us about or get us on Twitter. Yeah, for now I'm going to move on to the last slide, which is just to say thank you all so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.